Hello everyone, my name is EVA. I am 32 years old and currently live in North Carolina, USA. My life is now tied to the Specialized Medical Center hospital, where I have to undergo long-term treatment because I have contracted a sexually transmitted disease, similar to HIV. This disease is gonorrhea, an extremely difficult disease to cure and has seriously damaged my health. Every day that passes, I clearly feel tired and in pain, not only physically but also mentally. The disease not only changes my body but also creates a distance with the people around me, making me feel isolated. People often stay away, afraid to contact me, because this disease is too dangerous and scary. Since knowing my condition, I can only wait helplessly and fear the day I will pass away. Life is now like an endless darkness, and I no longer hope to return to normal life. I still remember vividly my childhood when my family was very happy. We lived in a family with my parents and 3 siblings, of which I was the eldest. Although we were a close-knit family, our life was not easy. My parents had to work very hard to make ends meet, often leaving home early in the morning and returning late at night. I always felt sorry for my parents and knew that I had to share that burden. When I was 15, after finishing 9th grade, I decided to drop out of school to help my family. It was not an easy decision, but I had no other choice. I wanted to ease the burden on my parents and help my 2 younger siblings have a better chance at education. After dropping out of school, I started looking for a job and finally got a job at a busy pub in Mecklenburg County, USA. The job was quite hard. I had to work from early morning to late at night, serving customers all day. Late at night, I was tired, just waiting for the day I received my salary so I could send some extra money home to help my parents take care of the family. Although the salary was not much, just enough to cover basic living expenses, I still persevered in working, trying my best for my family. My life went on like that, day by day, month by month, with repetitive work and endless efforts. I worked very hard at the pub, serving customers from morning to night, but the money I earned was only enough to cover basic living expenses. I never spent lavishly, because deep down, I always thought about my responsibility to my family. Every month, I sent a large part of my salary back to my parents, helping them take care of my 2 younger siblings who were still in school. That was the duty I set for myself, because I knew my parents had sacrificed too much for us. However, life at the bar was not easy. Every night, I had to face many unpleasant situations from drunk customers. Many of them lost control and acted inappropriately. They often intentionally touched and abused female employees like me. Although I complained to the bar owner many times, because the bar was crowded and profit was the top priority, she could only ignore it. That indifference made me and my colleagues feel extremely helpless. We had to endure, because there was no other choice. For me, this was the only job that helped me earn some money to take care of my family. Things got worse when I started to fall into debt. The income from this job was not enough to cover everything. The amount of money I had to send home to my family was increasing, but my personal living expenses were not small. Rent, food, unexpected expenses that arose made me constantly have to borrow from friends and acquaintances. Although I did not want to, there seemed to be no other way to survive in this situation. The pressure weighed on me every day. As the debt grew, I even borrowed money from the bar owner. The owner initially lent me a little to get by, but then the amount I borrowed became larger, and I fell into a vicious cycle. I had to work harder to pay off the debt, while trying to earn more to survive. The mounting debt made me anxious and often had trouble sleeping. Sometimes I wondered if there was a way out of this situation, but every door seemed closed. During those days, I didn't know how to escape the spiral of debt. My friends started to be hesitant when I asked to borrow money, because they had already lent me quite a lot. The owner of the pub became more and more annoyed, constantly reminding me and asking me to pay back the debt quickly. The pressure from all sides made me feel like I was falling into an abyss with no way out. Every night, I lay awake thinking about my family, my debt, and my future. Was there any way I could pay off my debt and return to normal life? Or would I be stuck in a spiral of helplessness and pressure? One afternoon, after finishing work at the pub, my best friend Abigail and I sat together in the small break room to chat. We talked about everything under the sun, about life, about distant dreams that we rarely dared to think about because life was too harsh. I remember at that moment, Abigail suddenly pulled out a brand new phone from her bag, an iPhone 14 Pro Max sparkling under the light. The phone looked so sleek and modern, something I could only dream of. A feeling of surprise mixed with jealousy suddenly flashed through my mind, because clearly our income from the pub was not enough to buy such an expensive phone. I couldn't contain my curiosity and asked Abigail, "Where did you get the money to buy this expensive phone?" "Did you win the lottery?" Abigail smiled mysteriously, her eyes shining with confidence that I had never seen in her before. She said that, in addition to her main job at the bar, she also had another job at night. That made me even more curious, because up until now I only knew that Abigail worked at the bar like me. I was able to buy this phone after just a few days of side hustles, Abigail said, her voice soft, but I could hear the excitement in it. I immediately asked, "What kind of job can make that much money?" Abigail hesitated, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Then she leaned down and whispered in my ear. "I work as a prostitute at night," she said, so quietly that only I could hear. I was completely shocked. I felt uncomfortable, but my curiosity and desire to escape my current life kept me listening. Abigail explained that she had joined a prostitution ring that catered to drunken gentlemen after they had been drinking. They were willing to pay a lot of money for a night of fun, and the job paid much more than working as a waitress at a bar. Although Abigail's words made me feel uneasy, I couldn't deny the allure of the money she earned. My life was currently in a dead end. I was in debt, and the job at the bar wasn't helping much. Every day I just buried myself in work, but never saw a way out. The debts were weighing heavily on my shoulders, and the thought of earning enough money to pay them off and help my family made me think more about Abigail's offer. In the days after hearing Abigail share about her night job, I tried to push away the thoughts of joining that path. I continued to work at the bar, working hard and trying hard, but the meager salary was not enough to make ends meet. The debt I was carrying was getting bigger and bigger. Friends lent me money, and the bar owner also began to urge me to pay back the money I had borrowed. The financial pressure weighed heavily on my shoulders. I felt like I was sinking into a quagmire from which I could not escape. Every night, when I got home from a long, tiring shift, I would lie awake thinking about the future. I felt helpless, as if all my efforts were for nothing. I began to look at Abigail's life and wonder if I was turning down an opportunity to get out of debt. Abigail had made a lot of money after just a few nights of work, and thoughts of joining the prostitution ring grew in my head. And so I officially entered the path that I had once refused to follow. My first night in the world of prostitution was a terrifying experience that I will never forget. A middle-aged man, probably in his 30s, called me that evening, asking me to serve him. Abigail, who had introduced me to the network, arranged everything. I remember feeling nervous and shaky as I prepared for that first meeting, feeling uneasy because I knew that my life would change after that night. I went to a luxurious hotel as my uncle had told me. The hotel was big and flashy. Everything was clean and shiny, but inside I felt suffocated. My heart was pounding as I stepped into the elevator, trying to calm myself down before facing that man. When I knocked on the door, my hands were shaking, and the feeling of unease grew stronger. When the door opened, I was faced with a man in his 30s, with a strong build and tired eyes, probably due to having drunk too much alcohol. He immediately asked a question that surprised me. "Are you still a virgin?" That sudden and rude question made me confused for a moment. But then I calmed myself down and replied, "This is my first time. Please be gentle and affectionate." In my mind, I knew that no matter how I said it, there would be no real gentleness on this night. With alcohol clouding his mind, that uncle could no longer control himself. He tortured me in all sorts of positions, not caring about my pleas or my pain. I tried to endure, gritting my teeth to keep from crying, but the tears still rolled down my cheeks. My body gradually became numb with pain and fatigue, and my mind was blank. I just wanted everything to end as soon as possible, to escape this nightmare. When it was finally over, I just lay on the bed, not having the strength to get up. The uncle came out of the bathroom and tossed me a thick wad of money. It was a large sum of money, much more than I had earned in a week working at the bar. Although I didn't want it, I couldn't deny the feeling of relief at the thought of this money going to help me pay off my debts. But at the same time, I also felt a deep sadness. I realized that I had traded something precious in my life for a few bills that I initially thought could save my life. I walked out of the hotel numb, physically exhausted, but emotionally torn. This first experience haunted me, but what was worse, when I thought about the money I had just received, I knew I couldn't stop. I needed money, a lot of money, and if this path could get me out of debt, then maybe I had to continue. The following nights came easier. After that first time, I gradually got used to the rudeness and disrespect from the rich, drunk, and carnal men. I learned to hide my pain, to please the customers, and gradually became a professional prostitute in the eyes of those who came to me. Gradually, I received more and more love from the rich uncles. They not only paid me but also gave me extra tips because of my good service and my beautiful appearance. Their compliments and admiring eyes seemed to make me feel better, and for a moment, I began to feel more confident about myself. In just a few weeks, I had earned enough money to not only pay off my debts but also buy luxuries that I had never dared to dream of before. I quit my job at the pub because the income from prostitution far exceeded what I could earn from serving customers. I invested more in myself, buying nice clothes, taking care of my appearance, to attract more customers. Gradually, I became part of the dark world that I once feared. Looking back, I can't remember how many men I've been with. They came and went, each with a story, but I didn't care. Those faces gradually faded from my mind, leaving only money and dim nights in the hotel lights. Everything became vague and cold. I lost a part of myself in this life full of traps. As time passed, the nights I thought I would never forget became a habit. I no longer felt the pain of the first night, but instead felt numb to my emotions. I no longer felt joy or pain. Money gradually became my only goal, and I could only continue to sink deeper into the path I had chosen, even though I knew in my heart that I would probably never get out. As time passed, the nights I thought I would never forget became a habit. I no longer felt the pain of the first night, but instead felt numb. I no longer felt joy or pain. Money gradually became the only goal, and I could only continue to sink deeper into the path I had chosen, even though I knew in my heart that I would probably never get out. My life gradually became aimless, lost in the wrong decisions I had made. And now, no matter how much money I had, I knew that I had lost something very precious: my self-respect, my hope, and myself. As time passed, I gradually realized that my body was no longer the same. I began to lose weight rapidly. My body became thin and weak. Although I felt very hungry, I had no appetite, and every time I saw food, I just wanted to push it away. My health gradually deteriorated. I felt more tired every day, and this made me panic. The first abnormality I noticed was when I had my period. Instead of being normal, I started bleeding a lot, more than ever before. Each time like that, I felt exhausted, had to lie in bed for hours before being able to stand up. The feeling of fear grew inside me, because it was clear that my body was changing in a bad way, completely different from what I had experienced before entering the path of prostitution. After weeks of feeling bad, I decided to do something. I couldn't keep ignoring my condition. So one day, after careful consideration, I decided to go see a private doctor for a checkup and blood tests. Sitting in the waiting room, my heart was pounding, and I felt uneasy. I knew something was wrong with my body, but I never imagined that the results would be something so serious. After what seemed like an eternity, the doctor finally returned with the test results. As he handed me the results, I looked at his face and saw the seriousness in his eyes. I took the results with trembling hands, each word flashing before my eyes like a nightmare. I had contracted a sexually transmitted disease, similar to HIV, and it was incurable. The disease I had contracted was advanced gonorrhea, a disease that had severely compromised my immune system and caused my health to rapidly decline. When the doctor told me about my condition, I was in complete shock. My mind went blank. All the surrounding sounds seemed to be cut off. Only the doctor's cold words remained. He explained that this disease, like HIV, cannot be completely cured. All they could do was give me some drugs to help relieve the symptoms and prolong my life. But that meant I could die at any time. As time passed, I could no longer hide my illness. My body began to change in a frightening way. My skin turned purple, not just in a few places, but all over my body. The bruises appeared without any apparent reason, and although I tried to cover them with clothes, people around me still began to notice. It was not just my skin, but my entire body that gradually became deformed. My face was gaunt, my joints ached, and my strength was severely reduced. Walking became difficult. Sometimes I felt like I had no strength left to stand. Every day that passed, I looked at myself in the mirror and no longer recognized myself. I had no choice but to face reality. I decided to call my family to inform them of my condition. It was a difficult call, perhaps the most difficult call of my life. I had prepared myself for their shock and pain, but when I heard my mother's voice, my heart sank. When I told my parents and siblings about my illness, about the fact that I had taken the wrong path and was now suffering the consequences, my family could not believe what they heard. They were shocked, unable to imagine that the daughter they had always loved and trusted had fallen into such a tragic situation. My parents were devastated. I heard my mother sobbing through the phone, her voice trembling and choked. My father, a man who was always strong and calm, was speechless. My siblings were also in shock, not knowing how to react. They could not understand how I got into this situation, how I had contracted such a terrible disease. The truth was so painful that it was hard to accept, but no matter how much they denied it, the truth could not be changed. My family had to accept this truth, no matter how much pain they felt. After learning about my condition, although my family was very sad, they always tried to keep in touch and comfort me. My mother often called to check on me, asked about my health, and encouraged me to try to fight the disease. However, I knew that they were in great pain, and that made me feel even more guilty. I had hurt the people I loved the most, and now there was no way to make up for it. My illness got worse and worse. The bruises were not only painful but also weakened my body. One day, after fainting in the street, I was taken to the hospital by the police. It was a specialized medical facility for patients with HIV and other terminal illnesses. When I entered the hospital, I felt like the world was collapsing under my feet. Everything around me became blurry. A feeling of despair enveloped me. I realized that this was where I would have to stay forever. There was no way to return to my previous life. During the first few days in the hospital, the loneliness and the physical and mental pain were almost unbearable. I felt like I was living my last days, with no hope of returning to a normal life. Although the doctors tried their best to treat and relieve my symptoms, they made it clear that the disease could not be completely cured. All they could do was keep my condition as stable as possible. And that meant I would have to stay in this hospital for the rest of my life, to be monitored and treated. After a long period of treatment, my health has somewhat recovered, but there is no denying that this disease has taken away a lot from me. I have traded my whole life for wrong choices. Now, all I can do is accept reality and live day by day, hoping that I can atone for some of my mistakes towards my family, even though I know that is impossible. My world has changed forever, and I have no way to go back to the way it was. After all the pain I have been through, I have come to realize that making bad decisions in life not only affects me but also causes deep damage to my family and friends. Just because I wanted a more comfortable life, I took a wrong path that I could not turn back from. Those consequences have left indelible wounds in the hearts of those I love. Looking back, I know I cannot change the past, but one thing I can do is share my story to warn others. So today I decided to participate in the Moth, a program where people can share their life stories honestly without appearing in person. I hope that my story will be a warning to young girls who may be facing a dangerous and tempting turn. I hope that they will realize the importance of getting an education and finding a stable job instead of getting caught up in complicated, secret networks that lead to heartbreaking consequences like I am suffering. I cannot change the past, but I hope that through this story, I can contribute to preventing similar tragedies from happening to others.